I heard you.
That was a great way to start the show. Good evening, everyone. I hit the broadcast button and we were talking about drinking, but I haven't been drinking, honestly. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Photography Live and Uncut. This, in actual fact, is the last show of the year. The last 2 weeks I've been away. Went down with a bit of a cold, so my apologies if I do start going into a coughing fit. I hit the mute button and let Jonathan, my guest today, chat away. And it is a great pleasure to introduce to you a photographer which I found a few years ago on the website when I was just doing what you normally do, searching around looking for photographers. And I found this guy named Jonathan Chritchley. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's great, and we've been talking quite a bit on emails and trying to get this together, and it's been fantastic that even though Jonathan's been travelling around all over the world doing his work, his commercial work, he's been keeping in touch with him. Absolute superb. So let's get straight to it, Jonathan. Photography, but basically the thing which I found on your bio is that your attraction to the sea first started when you were visiting the small town on the south coast of Lymington. Tell us about that time in your life.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I'd grown up in Surrey, obviously just outside London, and we moved actually to Lymington when I was about 13 or 14, and it's a town that's very well known for its sailing. It has a huge heritage in sort of sailing and water sports and things. And it was at that point, wandering around the cobbled streets of the quays, and I was exposed to a very well-known photography family called Beacon of Cowes, who, as most people will know, who have been taking photographs of sort of sailing boats for something over 100 years. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful story. And that was kind of what sparked the whole thing off. And the images that they produced in those times were wonderful, and then of course being close to the sea just sort of, yeah, it just sparked something off in me which went on to become a real passion. And it was really the sea that came first, way before the photography, really. That's right.
Yeah, I was going to ask you this. So your interest in the sea, so you actually in fact actively got involved with sailing and sailing boats and that sort of thing, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just the sea, anything to do with the water. I just became completely obsessed. So yeah, I sailing and swimming, and later on a bit of surfing and a bit of windsurfing, anything to do with the sea, scuba diving. I was really sort of very much taken by it. And then, yeah, as I said, a little bit later on came the photography. But those early pictures from Beacon of Cowes, they always kind of stuck in my mind, I think. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing, amazing. So you've made a good point there. Bringing it into the photography, nice little segue. What was your first camera that you had?
Yeah, my first grown-up camera was a Nikon FM, it was called, and it was a big brick of a camera which I had with a battery pack, and it was completely bomb-proof, and it was a wonderful thing that you could just throw around, which is good because I do tend to sort of treat my cameras fairly badly. So even in those days, it was the right choice because it was just completely almost indestructible, I would say. And we were just speaking before this. I was just saying, you said that you regretted selling one of your first cameras, and I really regret selling that one because I kind of wish I still had it. It meant so much to me.
Yeah, that's right. It's the FM2 that we were talking about that I had, and I just love using it. But for some reason, one of those whims, you think, right, time to move on, and you get one of these autofocus cameras, and the FM2 and the FE2 went, and I regret it to this day, basically. I've still got someone gave me a Nikon, something's up there, Nikon F, I think it is, but it's I never use it, so it's nice to have them to look at.
Do you still sort of put some film in a camera every now and then?
Well, now and then. I have got 2 or 3 film cameras which I sort of have a tendency to carry around from time to time. But there'd be Olympus Trip that I use, and one at the moment at repair is a Yashica GT. So I'm just waiting for that to come back, which is a sort of like a rangefinder camera. So I'm going to start using that a little bit. But I'm more digital now with the using of the Fujis, which is ideal for my street photography. Let's carry on this mode about gear, because as I was saying to you when we had a little chat earlier on, I can only think of saltwater cameras. They just don't work. There's something here that I just can feel rust. I can think of all bad things. So let's talk about the gear that you use now. For your especially when you're working, dare I say, at sea or with the sea and your yachts and stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess the top on the shopping list is probably insurance. That's very high up on the list.
Yeah.
I've I've stuck with Nikon throughout the years, so I still I think people tend to do that, don't they? Often
Yeah.
people tend to do the same brand through for whatever reason, but I've always found they give me the quality I need, and as you just mentioned, the sort of destructible ness. They tend to, yes, they rust, of course. The little screws that you get in the DSLRs, they all rust. At the moment, I'm using the D800 bodies, and I get through them. They do rust, and they have a bit of a hard time, but they churn out some wonderful quality pictures, which is what it's all about, really. So you just have to you try and protect the cameras as much as you can. Now, when I'm shooting the boats, I tend to be I'm often shooting from another boat.
Right.
Very low. I try and find the lowest possible boat that I can find, and get myself elbows almost sort of resting in the water, and then shoot up at the boats. And that, of course, means that you're getting a lot of, lot of spray. So you do have to keep spraying them and keeping them keeping them dry. And there is the lifespan is more limited, but it's part of the job. It has to happen.
Pretty expensive camera, really. What's that? A 36 megapixel camera, the D800. I'm assuming it's the 800, not the E.
Yeah, it's the E actually.
Oh, it is the E.
Yeah. Well, because of the sales and things,
Yep.
The aliasing thing. I mean, why I had to pay more money for a camera that had less in it, I don't know. But apparently they told me that.
Yeah.
That's the way. It's because I mean, like everybody does. I read the reviews and read all the bits and pieces and decided that was the one that was best suited for what I did. Because of course, what I do is a combination of the same pictures and waterscapes and other things. So I needed something that was going to be fairly all round, and it seemed to do the job, and I'm very happy with it. I haven't upgraded to the 810. I've not felt the need, so I still use the 800 at the moment. Yeah,
because there's obviously they've now just introduced the 750. They had a lot of problems with the 600, and the 610 replaced that. But I've heard some good reviews about the 750. Seems to be quite a good camera to have. But again, when you're talking the type of work that you're producing, with that extra megapixels that the 800 has, that's obviously is a requirement for the type of work that you're producing for your fine art photography.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, it's my stuff now. When I first started, I mean, the prints that everyone was churning out were very small, and that's what everyone wanted, was just sort of these small little prints. But things have moved on, and people want these big sort of statement prints, and we as photographers have to move with that and have to sort of supply what people want. And now to order a 1 meter 50 square print is perfectly normal. It's and you have to have the quality to back that up. Absolutely.
Yeah. What sort of lenses are you using with the 800 when you're out? Let's just stick with sales at the moment, if you don't mind, because that's the nature of the subject for the moment. But what's the sort of typical lens that you'll be using for that sort of work?
I just changed actually. I was just out shooting the boats again in September, end of September, and up until recently I've been using, for landscape work, I always use manual focus kind of prime lenses, but for the boat stuff it would be very difficult to do that, and so you always use zoom lenses, and I use the 24-70 Nikon, the 2.8, and I use, up until recently I've been using the 70-200 2.8, but I bought the new 80-400, the very new one, the one that came out a few months ago. A lot of people I knew who are wildlife photographers were saying it was fantastic, so I thought I'd give it a go. And yeah, it was great. It was a little bit tough to focus sometimes, but it was a great lens, so I used that the last time I went out. But normally it would have been the 70-200.
Yeah.
This time, it was good. I enjoyed it. It was a good lens.
When you first started this venture of taking photographs of the sales, did you use film cameras at the time, or were you using? Is it all been digital?
Yeah, I got into it sort of a bit. I think the first time I went out with the sailing boats was in 2008.
Oh right, okay.
I'd already crossed into digital by then. I mean, not for everything, but certainly for that. I've been using Hasselblad to a certain extent, and I still have that. I didn't have one, but which actually is ideal for that sort of thing because it's completely mechanical. There's no batteries, no nothing. It would have been a great camera to use, but I just kind of got into digital and realised I wanted to use that camera. But funnily enough, talking about quality and talking about the D800, I noticed the last time I went out in September, I was trying to reshoot a lot of the stuff, or the same sort of stuff that I'd shot, in 2008, because the camera I was using then was only a 12 megapixel camera, and although it was quality one, and the lenses were good. It's still, you know, the sort of native size print was a lot smaller. So I found myself trying to reshoot stuff, although that's almost impossible. But certainly that was in my mind.
I was going to say, how can you get the same unfurling sail that you've had before? It's got to be a different aspect, hasn't it? But
you can't
reshooting that style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But well, just let me. Sorry, just to cut in there, but I'm just talking. I'm interested how the abstract style that you created with the sails. Where did that come from? Was it just something which was just natural for you to start taking, or was it something which you'd seen and you thought, I can adapt this a little bit more?
No, I have absolutely no idea. I've been asked that before, and I don't know where it came from. I think it's just like all these things, it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
I think that I told you, I've spoken about the Beacon of Cows, so I'd seen these wonderful black and white photographs of the sailing boats that they'd done, although most of the ones I'd seen were sort of done in the 1930s and 40s. They were, you know, wonderful. And then I got introduced to a family of photographers from the States called the Rosenfelds.
Okay.
If you've not seen that stuff, you should have a look. Just Google it. It's wonderful. And they'd done, back in the 1930s and stuff, they'd done stuff from the guy was climbing up the sail, up the mast, and shooting down on the sail and kind of shooting these abstract-y kind of things. It was completely suicidal. I mean, it was, you know, in those conditions. And it just sort of, it started to spark things off with me a little bit. And then I'd seen some fashion stuff. I can't remember who did it. I think it was Di Marcello, one of those great fashion photographers from the 80s who'd done this stuff with models and fabric all kind of glowing.
Yeah.
And that had sort of sparked something off. So I think it was probably a combination of all those ideas and then actually being there and being very close to them and close to these wonderful sails and just seeing all that texture and things. I think probably a combination of all that sort of sparked it off. But it was it's a lovely thing to do.
Yeah, I think I asked this question to Michael Kenner, and I think one of the most intriguing answers that I've ever had, actually, that he was talking to his the lady that he was working for, name I forget at the moment, but she said, your style you get from your signature. You have a signature. Who created that signature? You did. Where did that signature come from? It was there. It just built on from there. And I think the same applies to photography. Really, it's you have a style and it's in you and it works. Whilst we're talking about style and the photographs we're talking about, let's do this screen share, which. The screen is probably going to go all funny. It's going to go all tunnel vision for the moment. Just bear with me. There we go. So now I've got to just do the present to everyone. This always happens. Yep. Can you see that now? You should be just stuck on my.
At the moment, it's the tunnel thing. I can see it.
Is it coming up again now? No, it's not doing that. Don't worry about it. It'll come in a minute. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. Come out of the screen share and do it again. There we go. Share. How's that?
There we go. Okay, I can see one of my pictures there. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly right. So what I'm going to do now, so that we don't get the crossover, fixed on my page here. So this, for the viewers that are watching, is jonathancritchley.com. I've clicked on his portfolio page. I'm going to put all the links on the blog like I normally do, and this is his first page. But we've been talking about sales, and this is the first set of images that I ever saw of Jonathan's work. So Jonathan, as I literally just click through each page, if you just want to make some comments about the photographs and things, you've got this unfurling.
Yeah, I mean, Mariette is a wonderful sailing yacht. You know, obviously all these boats are wonderful. They're all sort of 100 years old and very large, wonderful boats. And this one, I was very close to the Mariette when she started unfurling the sail here, and I could just straight away. I mean, I had no idea I was going to be taking this picture, but as always with things like this, you just sort of you take what's there, and I just saw this, and it just. You know, the way the light was hitting the sail just really said something to me. So I just started probably about 12 pictures.
There, all these images I noticed are coming up. They're all square format. I'm assuming that you've cropped to this, or have you used, in this case, your Hasselblad for these shoots?
No, I do love the square format, and I think it comes from the Hasselblad thing. But with the 800, I can shoot in 5:4 format,
All right.
which is almost there,
Yeah.
and then I tend to just sort of shoot slightly wider than I want it to be, and then wait at the end. This
Crop
this
it accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. This photograph is probably one of the, probably one of the most widely known of this series, and it's done really well for me. But I just love it. I remember that. I'm like with all this stuff. I remember the actual moment of taking this, and the goosebumps that you get when you're seeing
Yeah.
one huge boats just moving through the water. It's just one of them. Being so close to them, it's just a truly wonderful thing to see. And as always, I think a photograph is just a memory. Something that sparks off a memory of an event. And for me, that's what I just remember the adrenaline from that particular shot.
Yeah.
And this one towards the end of a day, just this wonderful, slightly smaller wooden yacht, just kind of sailing back towards. This was near Saint-Tropez, so just sailing back towarst Saint-Tropez, just as the light was kind of failing, and you kind of get this lovely sort of sense of returning home, which is nice, I think.
Are all these shots taken basically around the French coast?
Yeah, yes, most of them are. As you've said, I live in France. Have you said that? I don't know.
I know. Well, that's the next segue, but that's
Right.
fine. You're living in Biarritz now, which is
So
fascinating that you do.
Yeah, and so although I'm on the Atlantic coast, it takes me 6-7 hours to drive down to the Mediterranean, and I can be there, and I tend to visit some of the regattas, and they have quite a lot throughout the year down on the Mediterranean coast, and it tends to be when you get the best groupings of these yachts, and I'm lucky enough now I get invited to the events, so I get the press boats and the helicopters and things, which is great. It kind of takes a lot of the hassle out of it. Well, there you go.
Talking of helicopters, is just as you mentioned it, I just had my cursor hovering over it.
You're such a professional. I love it. That was
superb.
I mentioned before about Rosenfeld and about them climbing up, the mast to shoot down at the boat, and I'm far too chicken to do anything like that. But I got to fly with a helicopter, at least I have on a couple of occasions, and I sort of tried to get the same sort of feel, which is what this one was about. It's kind of a tip of the hat, really, to the Rosenfelds and what they were doing without helicopters, 100 years ago or a bit more.
Yeah, lovely shot. And just the last one of the sales, which I must show, because I'm going to say this: there's not a lot of photographers out there that would take a shot like this. Basically, it's playing on the rule of thirds, that I know, but all this empty space on the left-hand side, you can just picture that the yacht is sailing into that space, and this beautiful furled. Is it a spinnaker?
Yeah,
it is. Yeah,
it is. You've spotted what I wanted to try and achieve with this photograph.
Yeah.
What I want to try and achieve with many of mine is to give the space for the imagination to work a little bit, and
exactly. Yeah.
I do like negative space, and it happens quite a lot in my pictures. Someone once said that they'd heard my work described as very lovely pictures of absolutely nothing, and I felt really quite flattered by that.
Yeah.
I can live with that. If they put that on my headstone, I'll be very happy. I think it's more about imagination and what you think should be in the space, or what's going to be in the space, as you just said. So
that's right. Yeah, then the corners of the frame on the right-hand side there, just where the sail actually meets those corners. That's a great shot. Let's switch over to the seahorses.
Yeah.
Absolutely superb, these images, and you're going to have to tell me where are these horses taken, and
well,
are they wild horses or what?
Well, I'd love to tell you that I waited, on location for 12 days before I actually saw a horse, but of course I would be lying. And no, so the area is in southern France again, so not too far from where the yachting pictures were taken, but this time we're very close to Marseille and an area called the Camargue, which is basically the delta of the Rhone River. So I know that you must be a very geographical man, so you know that the Rhone River is this big river that flows down through France and ends up on the coast of Provence, and has a huge delta. And this area is well known for being an area for these horses. These horses have lived there for thousands of years, and no one's quite sure why they came there. Some people think it was with the Romans, some people think it was before that. But I don't know if you've ever heard that expression, but when I was a kid, I was on a beach with my mum and dad, and I noticed that the white water on top of the waves, because the wind was blowing, I think it was a typical British seaside scene, and I said, "What's that white water? You know, what's that white stuff?" And my dad turned to me and said, "Well, that's the white horses," and which was this expression to describe this. And I remember as a sort of, I don't know, 8 or 9-year-old being thoroughly taken up in this whole story, the idea that these horses kind of running in from the waves, and I think the idea just stuck in my mind. So a long time later, I heard about the Camargue and these white horses, which are, although not quite wild, I mean, they live completely outside these days, but they are actually owned by the different farms or ranches in the area, and they're sort of looked after to a certain extent. But they're wild in as much as they live out in the open, and they don't have stables or anything like that. But this particular group, and many that I work with there, are basically, you know, we encourage them to be in a certain place at a certain time, and we have rides either side of the horses to try and keep them in check and trying to stop them from bolting, because of course they do like to run. And if there was no one, they would just go and you never see them again. So yeah, it's quite a production to do it, but it's the most amazing experience. And having shot it a few times, I decided to run at a workshop doing it as well. And it's always one of the favourite sort of events of the year.
Yeah, I noticed that on your workshop list, which I thought, cool, that would be an amazing workshop to attend. We'll talk about your workshops later, because quite diversified and a busy schedule, I might add, a very busy schedule. This photograph here reminds me of the sail photograph that we just talked about, where you're playing on the thirds rule again, and all that empty space.
Yeah,
beautiful shot of the horse's head.
Thank you. It's one of my favourites as well. I was just talking about this one the other day, actually. It's one of my favourites too of the horses, because I mean, the horse was obviously, as you can see by the title, it's called Sleeping. The horse was just fast asleep. I had no idea I was there, standing up. And I was able to sort of spend, you know, half an hour just kind of shooting around this lovely animal, and it was fast asleep. And that what you said about it kind of tying in with the sailing pictures. I often think like that. I often, as I'm taking something, it reminds me of something else I've done, so I tend to sort of frame it the same way. And I think it often leads to this sort of thing, which is not necessarily a typical thing. This is more half and half, not like the thirds of the other one. But breaks all the rules, but I do like this. It has something about it.
Nice one. This one is a character there. That one, look at that itch. I love it.
Yeah. Well, they do. The wind blows. You see, they have the Mistral wind that blows down there, and they get it blows in their ears, so they pull these funny faces because of the wind in their ears, which is where the itch comes from.
And now this one, I personally would have called this Black Sheep of the Family, but I'm assuming that this foal, the fur changes as the foal gets older. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're born, you're a very knowledgeable man. They're born sort of brown.
As a guess.
Very good guess. And they tend to sort of go white between the ages of 2 and 3, so it's quite late on that they go white.
Yeah. Let's just click to shorelines, because this is where the minimalistic work is more enhanced, really, in my opinion. I'll just flick through some of these here, which long shutter speeds. Are you using an ND filter on these?
I work quite closely with Lee, so I have a really good relationship with. They're such lovely people, and they've asked me to sort of be I don't know what they call it really, the guy, you know, they have this range of long exposure filters, you know, the big stop and little stop and all that. So I work
big stoppers, yeah.
And I've just done a video for them about, you know, sort of showing them how to use it. And it's really done because I was using it anyway, and I met up with them and we had a good old chat, and they said, well, do you want to come and do some stuff with us? So I said, yeah, it sounds great, because it's a product that I use anyway. And I use long exposures a fair bit. I think people think I use it more than I do. You know, as you're clicking through now, I think it's probably about a third of, maybe a quarter or a third of my work is done on long exposure. But again, I just like the space it creates. You know, the sea, working with the sea so much, the sea it has an awful lot of texture in it, and it's actually a very busy thing. And so if I want to sort of reduce something down, like this particular shot now that you're looking at, if I hadn't shot that on long exposure, then all that sea on the bottom half of the picture would all be a lot of texture and stuff, which would be great in some way. When you're looking for something, when you're looking to simplify something, it just kind of, for me, that really helps. Those techniques really help. So.
There's one here which taken in China, which lovely reflection there on the water, and
Yeah,
All your work in mono, Jonathan. Have you? Is it something which you think that way, or is it?
It's certainly what. Had you asked me that question last year, I would have probably said yeah, absolutely. But I have actually started doing a bit of colour.
All right.
But you know, I figured initially I figured it was a sort of new craze that would never catch on. But now I've realised perhaps the colour photography is something to be reckoned with. So it is. No, so I've done a bit, and there was a bit that we sort of saw earlier on. A bit. I tend to like the blue tones, and so if you go back to the new work, you'll see the beginning. There's some kind of bluish pictures which I really like. It's kind of almost monochrome, but has this blue tinge. So yeah, I've been doing a bit of experimenting with that, and I'm quite happy.
I'll have a look at that in a second, because there's just a photograph here which I've spotted. I don't think for 1 minute. It might be. Is that? It is Dungeness. I've just seen the title at the bottom. Yeah,
that gives it away.
A few weeks ago. Yeah, the title gives it away exactly. Because all I could see was a little thumbnail at the bottom, and then.
Well, funnily enough, I was introduced to Dungeness by Liz Roberts, Elizabeth Roberts, I should call her, who's the editor of Black and White Photography magazine, and she.
Oh right.
Dungeness has always been I met her at a thing, and she said that she wanted to take me there because she wanted to see what I would make of this place. So I met her. We met down in Sussex, and we drove there, and she was showing me around. I was just absolutely blown away, and that's when this picture was taken, when we were together shooting.
It's quite an amazing place, isn't it? You've got this huge power station there by the station, which that mini rail which runs along, which I've been on in actual fact, jigging along on that one, and then you turn around and you look out to sea, and you just got this huge shingle area with all these broken up old boats and rails leading to nowhere and little tiny huts.
Yeah,
and in actual fact, people that live in the southeast of the country, I'm in Bromley, which is just south of London, and being a member of camera clubs in the past, the amount of photographs you see of Dungeness is quite amazing. It's a real lure of a place to go to.
You know that gravel beach that you're looking at in this picture is actually, as far as I'm aware, Great Britain's only classified desert.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was looking up deserts the other day about something else, and I was astonished to find that this is actually being classed as, whoever does classes deserts as deserts, this is actually being classed as desert. So there you go.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
That's great. Let's have a quick look at your the new work here, and I'm going to go straight to the these blue images you're talking about. So really, you're playing with. Oh, that's a classic of the fisherman in Lianjiang, yes.
Yeah.
Now, the one which I saw earlier on is this one here.
Yeah.
It's almost what's that? Is it canotype? You're playing with the blues here, aren't you?
Cyanotype, yeah. No,
cyanotype, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is actually the blues from. This was, as you can see, was in Mozambique in East Africa. And but the blues were just beautiful. I mean, the blues were. I just couldn't put it into black and white. I have put some of these pictures into black and white, but this particular one, there's just a little bit of red on the boat.
Yes, I see it.
It just, I obviously tried it in black and white, and I thought, no, there's just something about this.
You can't have that. Yep.
So I kept it, and I just desaturated it a bit. To be honest, I don't like vivid colours in my photographs, so I just kind of took something out of it, and I was really pleased with what happened. There was a couple from then that I really liked, just some skies and sea as well, which is just next to it, which I really like, and so it kind of sparked off a new thing really. Yeah, there you go. That, I mean, it's just a big thing, but just I just quite liked what I was seeing from. This was shot from another fishing dhow actually, and just the skies were so beautiful. They're very painterly, I think.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. We've had a real good look at your work there, so I'm going to come out of the screen share.
Yeah.
And back to that. We're back to that. That's super. Now, I didn't know this until literally 2 minutes before the show started. You got a book. And for the viewers, I was literally saying to Jonathan before that I was just sitting down with my wife watching some television. I thought, I wonder if Jonathan's got a book, and I couldn't believe it. Went to your website, and there it is. So let's talk about this book, because it's been a long time coming, if you don't mind me saying. The question is why.
think it was a question of time. I needed to give it some time to make, because you can't just do a book. I mean, it sounds great, but doing a book, making a book is, it's a very time-consuming process, and especially when you're, a control freak like me, I don't want to just sort of give someone else the job to make a book for me. I wanted to sort of, poke my nose in and interfere as much as possible, and of course that there's a lot of time involved in that, and also meeting the right team and having the right pictures. It was the whole thing that came up, and I decided to do the first book, and this one is. It's called Silver, and the title is really a kind of it refers to the tone of I look for my black and white pictures. I don't like the tone black and white or monochrome. I look for this kind of silver quality in the water when I'm shooting, and because pretty much all the photographs involved in the book are of the water, the silver kind of was I used when talking to the publishers about the book, and the name just stuck, so it just became the title of the book. And what we're left with was sort of 70-odd images of mine over the last sort of 7 years, basically all revolving around the sea or the water in some way. And I worked with a great team, Keith Wilson, who was the founder of Black and White Photography and outdoor photography, and Eddie Frams, who's very well known for publishing and doing other bits and pieces in black and white. There's a great team, which we put together to specifically work on this book, and I couldn't have picked a better team. They were wonderful, and Keith came down here to France. We spent a few days together kind of going through that whole process about what pictures do you want to go in the book, and I said, how do we go about it? So he said, well, I'm going to come down and we're going to just go into an empty room. I want you to print 300 or 400 of your best photographs. That's a sentence that's very easily said, but you just think about the logistics involved in printing 300 or 400 photographs. And then I think I printed about 200 of them in the end. And then we went to this hotel room, and this big sort of conference room, and he said, right, so I had a big pile of prints, and he said, pull out the sort of 12 that you can't see this book being produced without. They have to be, and so I started with those. And then he sort of filling in the gaps, and watching him work was a wonderful process. And I learned so much from that. I had no idea there would be so much involved, but the whole team was very much sympathetic to what I wanted to produce, and I was very pleased with the results. So the book came out at the beginning of the year, and I'm very pleased with it. It's very kind of me in that it's very understated. I mean, there's no big photographic cover. It's just a sort of charcoal grey, dark kind of graphite-y cover with just the name on it. And it's quite minimalist in its kind of feel, and the quality is lovely. So I'm really happy with it. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. And to print off 200 images to share with an editor is amazing. And I'm interested. You did the printing yourself. You didn't give that to someone else to do. So let's talk about in a sort of condensed the editing process and that you did with the images. Do you use Lightroom, or are you Aperture user, or Photoshop? Or
processing? Or are we talking the workflow? Are we talking
the workflow, just briefly, because I know it can get quite intricate sometimes.
Yeah, it's honestly, workflow with me is a necessity and something that has to be adhered to, because otherwise you get yourself in a right mess.
Yeah.
But I am not a computer person by any means. So we've already mentioned that I come from a film background, so I like things to be fairly spontaneous. I don't like. I'm originally from the dark room, and that whole thing is if you messed up halfway through, you'd have to start again. So my kind of workflow, I use Lightroom and I use Photoshop a little bit. But it's really my perspective on it, my sort of rules to myself. Or if I could do it in the dark room, I'll do it in using those pieces. If I couldn't, then I won't. And that's my kind of rules to myself. And my workflow probably takes from start to finish about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, I suppose. And if it's any longer than 10 minutes and I'm working on a picture, I think, well, I messed up. I'm trying to fix it rather than trying to enhance it.
I know, Cham. Yeah, you're trying to improve the image in the editing process, and 9 times out of 10, you can't do that.
No, absolutely. I don't use layers or anything in Photoshop. It's very quick. It's more about contrast and things. Yeah. And controlling light a little bit, making sure that I want people to, I know when I'm making a photograph where I want people to look. And so I need to make sure that happens without any distractions. So there might be a little bit of cropping or a little bit of messing about with dodging and burning, but generally, if I haven't got it right when I'm taking it, it won't sort of pass the grade, I think. So.
Yeah, no, I understand exactly where you're coming from. You can't make a good photograph out of a bad image, or something that's just not right for to be printed to.
Yeah.
Interesting. Just one passing point there on your Lightroom workflow. Do you use the plugins at all, like Nik software, or do you do all your what's the word I'm looking for? The presets in Lightroom to take it from the color version to the you call it silver, but I'll call it mono, the
Yeah.
black and white version.
I looked at the Nik software when it came out. I think I
Yeah.
did it mostly because I knew that people would ask about it if I was doing workshops and things. So I wanted to know what it was about. Like anything that comes out, I
Yeah.
want to know what it is. I think it's important to keep an open mind. I looked at it and I downloaded
Sure.
the sort of trial version, and it was fine. It's great. It's not for me personally because I already had my own thing and I was very happy
Yeah.
with what I do. So no, I didn't. I ended up not sort of buying it, but I'm aware of it and it's very good. But I have my own way. And it doesn't
Yeah.
really involve presets. It's just, firstly, it doesn't really matter where I put it into, where I convert it. I do it either in Lightroom or in Photoshop. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It's most is that contrast and the control over those tones, which is for me the most important thing. So I use Instagram religiously right through from taking my photograph right through to processing and printing. The histogram is something I use all the time, and I've worked with many photographers recently. Some of my kind of heroes, in a way, of photography who don't even use it at all. Which I was like, wow, and which is great because everyone has their own ways of doing it. But that's
exactly. Yeah. Interesting comment you make there as well, because obviously we're getting into the workshops now, basically, which you've it's an amazing selection of workshops that you do through the year. You've obviously got to be aware of not only the processes and the editing process, but you've obviously got to be mindful of the different cameras which everyone's going to bring along, because they're not all going to be Nikon users, are they? I'm assuming that your photographers turn up with all sorts. Canon obviously is I would think the obvious other camera they'll bring along.
People have all sorts, and you mentioned before that the Fujis and stuff coming through now, and the Nikons and the Canons, and it's not, when you come on a trip with me, it's not really about that. I don't think anyone ever asked an oil painter what paintbrush they use.
Yeah, very true.
It's not really about the camera. It's about these and about what you do with it. Yeah, you can help people out with people are stuck and they can't find something on the camera. Yes, of course, it helps to have a bit of knowledge, and I try and stay a little bit knowledge about that sort of things, but ultimately I think people come for more than that. I mean, they can pick up all that stuff on a YouTube tutorial about where But I think when people come on a trip with me or any of the people I run workshops with or for, I think it's more than just that. It's coming for an experience and for seeing things the way you see them, and talking about things and enjoying it, and just it's like a mindset more than anything else. And I think that's it has gone really well. The workshops way better than I ever dreamt it would, and we have something like an 85% rebooking rate, which is amazing.
I saw that on your website. That is amazing. You got that such a return. That is truly amazing. And I'll put the link on in the blog for the page there, because well, if you're into workshops and you want to go and you're into this type of photography with regards to seascapes and sails and horses and landscapes and all that sort of thing, well, if you can't find a workshop on that page there, then I don't think you'll find one anywhere.
No, and it's fun. The thing is, it's fun. It's all that stuff that you said, and I thank you for saying all that. Very kind of you, but it's also fun, and I think that, like I just said before about my pictures, I said something about them being a memory of a particular moment in time. It's a bit of a cliche, but that's what it is. I think unless you create an amazing experience, you're not going to get amazing photographs like that. To me, it's just
very true.
You can't have one without the other. And on my trips, often we do stuff that's got nothing to do with photography. I mean, well obviously, photography is the main, kind of focus. Excuse the pun, but there's a lot of stuff, other stuff we'll do, and a lot of talking, a lot of laughing, a lot of busy yards, whatever it is we'll have, because it all adds to the whole spirit of what we're there to do. People go back from a trip thinking, that was really good fun, and that it was for me too. I think it all, and for people I work with. So that we couldn't do it if it wasn't like that. If it was a serious kind of talking about gear all the time, it would drive me up the wall. I mean, I wouldn't want to do that. Would you?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's interesting actually the way that you're talking there, because to make sure that the viewers are aware, we now moved away from JonathanChritchley.com. We've now moved into Ocean Capture. workshops, which is yourself, and you've got some guys that are working with you. Michael Levin, I've noticed, is now starting to do some workshops, which is that's truly amazing. And of course the other couple that work with you. How is this just a working relationship that you have, or is it building slowly into a dare I use the term, a business with these guys?
You can use the term. I think it is. It's one of those things that I had no idea which way it was going to go when I started it. To be honest with you, when I started running workshops, it was to earn money because I'd started a business from scratch, and my wife was pregnant with twins, and I had to find a way to earn money quickly because I'd given up a job to basically do this. And that was one of the things that sort of got put on the list about what can I do, and it started like that. So now it's evolved. It started off with a few workshops in France, where I live down here. It's evolved into other things because people that were coming down here wanted to go and perhaps go somewhere else with me. So we went to Venice, and then we started going elsewhere, always with the kind of water theme, of course, because it's me and it's capture. It's all. And then I started realizing that I couldn't possibly keep up with the demand. That I was never going to see my family, or if I kept on adding trips all the time. So then I started looking around, thinking, where can I offload some of this stuff? People that will keep the same spirit as I have. And then Leeming and Patterson, who were these wonderful Scottish photographers, they're based up in Scotland, Galloway, had this wonderful kind of very abstract techniques which they do, and they're really lovely people. So they kind of came aboard, and a couple of others. And then Michael Levin, I've been, like you, Sam, by the sound of it, I'd seen work, and I've been a big fan, and obviously seen the success he was having in galleries. And
that's right.
I judged he'd run a couple of workshops, and then last year, this year actually, he didn't have any publicized. So I just emailed him and said, listen, why don't you let me do one for you? And he phoned me, we had a chat, and got on really well, and that's how it started. And then we did one back in September in France, and then we're doing one. I just announced one next year in April in Venice in 2015, and then the following year a very special thing in Japan, which we're working on at the moment together, which is his big area of inspiration. So it's great. And I'm working with some others. There's a very famous, very well-known equine photographer called Tony Stromberg, and I'm going to be doing some stuff with him. So I think it's these kind of heroes of photography thing with Michael and Tony and some others as well. Mitch Browner, who does the big storm pictures. I don't know if you've seen his stuff.
Yeah, I've seen Mitch Browner. Yeah, sure.
So it's all these wonderful photographers that don't often run workshops, or at least, but just it's just I like that idea of ocean capture. It's kind of evolving into this thing where you get some wonderful photographers and you get a great experience, and it's all this kind of fine art base as well, which is obviously what I'm about and what most
exactly. Talking about Mr. Brana, I saw his work through one of the magazines produced by Brooks Jensen in Lenswork.
Lenswork, yeah, fantastic.
Absolutely amazing photography. Yeah.
He's wonderful. He's a wonderful man, and very, very kind and very gentle, and a lovely chap. And I'm looking forward to working with him. As Michael Levin is a wonderful guy, and these people are all very nice, and it's nice. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be working with them.
Yeah, that's right. Michael Levin's book is Zibrato is the one that I've got. Stunning work. And this is what I like really, because I think this is something which is now becoming something which I think the photographer now has got to take on board, that you can't just rely on the sale of prints, the sale of books. You've got to, if you're the type of person that wants to share your knowledge and your experiences, the workshop is definitely the way to go. And obviously we all need to make money, need to get some income, and the workshop is now becoming a very useful product for photographers like yourself to bring that income, that much needed money to put bread on the table, isn't it?
We have mortgages to pay and families to be like anything else. I do firmly believe that you have to be fairly entrepreneurial as a photographer these days. When I first started, workshops were pretty much my only source of income. Now I'm lucky enough to say it's not. There's other things that equal it, but at the start it was certainly not the case, and it was necessary, but also it's fun. It's fun mixing. I think what I do particularly in my style of work is very insular. I don't if I'm out on a cliff in Iceland or on a sailing boat somewhere, you don't see other people very much. and I like people, so it's nice to be able to mix, the photography with like-minded people who want to have good fun and have a good chat and enjoy a few glasses of wine. So
exactly right, and you get a nice bit of interaction as well, and who knows, sometimes, no doubt, I'm sure you pick up some little tips as well as you go along. That's the beauty, I think, of teaching. You learn something somewhere.
Absolutely, I'm pretty sure. I learn an awful lot from people that come on my. I'll never tell them that because I never.
No, of course not. They'll never come again. They'll ask you to their workshop.
Absolutely.
It's interesting actually because we touched on the future work plans there, and it's nice to hear that you're going to start collaborating with other guys to do other workshops. So that's covered that point, actually. So we come to the point in our little chat here. For those that watch the show regularly, originally we started off giving 5 photographers' names to the guest, and they give me a one-word association. That's now just moved slightly. It's evolved slightly into talking about the photography and the most the person that gives the guest the most inspiration. So let's ask you, Jonathan, the person that gives you your inspiration, who you're inspired by the most.
Well, artistically, it's one of those horrible questions, this, because I think probably the answer would change, every hour.
You'll think of someone else.
Absolutely, but
yeah.
Probably I have to think to the person that's inspired me the most creatively is not a photographer at all, but a very talented Frenchman by the name of Luc Besson, who is a film director, and a very, very talented cinematographer. He's made films like The Big Blue and Joan of Arc and all these other movies, but I first got into. He did a film about the sea, a movie about the sea called The Big Blue, which is a wonderful movie. No one's ever seen it. It's made in 1988, so it's a bit dated now. But the first 20 minutes or so was in black and white, set in the Greek islands. It was like a retrospective of the characters, seeing them as sort of small children running around these Greek islands. And I watched this as a sort of fairly young man and just got completely spellbound by the way he put a frame together. So he just had so much space within the frame, and just had people kind of walking into the frame. He wouldn't follow someone. He would just hold the frame of this wonderful kind of beautifully held together landscape picture, and just have people kind of walking through it. And I just loved the way he did that, and I often, even now, 20-something years later, I still think about his pictures. And I saw the film again recently with my kids, actually, and watching it again, it just made me realize how much I've been influenced when I saw, especially those first 20 minutes or so. I'm thinking, God, that looks like my so-and-so picture, or that looks like this, or and it's amazing how you can go back. So I would say, if I had to choose one, and you're very cruel for making me do that, I would probably choose that one.
All right, because is there? You did say that when we were talking before that there's a possibility that a favourite photographer might pop into your brain as you're saying something, but
yeah, I guess
there isn't. Is there another inspiration if there isn't another photographer?
Well, I probably have to go back to what I was talking about earlier on with the sailing pictures, and probably the Rosenfeld Beacon of Cows. Rosenfeld is just. And there's not just one guy. I think there's about 5 brothers, and they all went out and just shot this wonderful stuff. And they just had this business called Rosenfeld, and you can just Google it, and it's just wonderful. They had the most wonderful sailing pictures, and they had they just got it. They just had the light, and the composition was just wonderful. And Beacon of Cows, again, it's a classic British name, and again, look at some of their old stuff. It's just truly wonderful. So I guess if you take those 2 influences and then you throw in a bit of Luc Besson, that's probably kind of getting to what I do a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And are you? I'm a firm believer that when you take a photograph, you do it subconsciously. Do you think that way, or is there a particular? Like Ansel Adams always used to say, the basis of forward thinking, of pre-thinking through the photograph. So is that your style, or perhaps I'm sort of jumping the gun a little bit, because if you're taking photographs of sails and yachts, and it is pretty sort of, oh, that's a good shot, boom, take that. You see it as you see it.
Yeah, it's more spontaneous. So I guess that's what I like about what I do, because it's very diverse. Although across, I have a portfolio which you can hopefully tell that's possibly one of my pictures looking through, but they're actually quite diverse, the photographs within that. So you have the sailing pictures, the kind of long exposure kind of stuff. You have the horses, and the more traditional landscape, minimalist kind of stuff is more considered, I suppose. It's more you're thinking about. You have time to think about it more. You have hours to think about it. and then I'm thinking about space, and I'm thinking about the space and how much of stuff I want to put in the space. And but bizarrely, when I'm shooting the sailing stuff, I have the very similar thoughts. I'm thinking of the sky and the sea, and I'm thinking, how much of this boat do I want to put in? And of course, things are kind of unraveling as it happens, but it's all about space. When I'm shooting, it's all about space, and then it becomes about light, of course, but more than light. It's a terrible thing to say as a photographer, but more than light, it's about the space that I can create around the thing that I'm vaguely interested in. How much space can I give it? And I was in Africa, South Africa, fairly recently, 3 weeks ago, just shooting. I was trying my luck at a bit of wildlife. I'm not a wildlife photographer at all, and I was trying the same methods then, really, and finding that it can actually, once you have this kind of thing that you're looking for, it can actually carry over through many different sort of genre of subjects. And yeah, so that's what it's interesting what you said. I mean, Ansel Adams is incredibly annoying because he has not only was one of the world's greatest photographers, but he has so many sayings. And I find that I have trouble thinking of one, and I wish that he had so many quotes, these wonderful quotes that he had.
Yeah, he's got some wonderful quotes. And in actual fact, I did ask this when I interviewed Ted Forbes, who's has got a regular show, and he's talks quite a lot about Ansel Adams. And I said to him, what do you think he would have made of the present equipment that would be available? Whereas Ansel would probably go out with his plate camera and he would dodge and burn in the dark room. And I said, well, what do you think he would think of the present? And he said he would love it with all this digital stuff available. He would go crazy over it.
I agree, and he had, you probably know this, but he converted his horse box into a dark room, so he'd actually tow it behind his car and actually, develop and print his pictures actually out in the field. And I'm thinking now, I've traveled with a sort of little Mac, Mac thing. I'm thinking, God, what would he make of this? And you're quite right, he would have absolutely loved it, I'm sure.
I saw a video on YouTube once, and I just couldn't believe this. He went into the dark room, he created the print, did his dodging and burning with his hands, and then he took it out, and the print was still wet. He put it in the microwave. And he said, I wish I could get this gloss finish every time. It was just amazing. I thought, I can't believe it. So there you go. There were microwaves available when he was alive, so it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Just a quick question, going back to the workshops, because I forgot to mention about this, because we touched on it when we had a little chat ourselves. DSLR and mirrorless. You're obviously still a DSLR user. What could I ask what your opinion is of mirrorless cameras, and do you think there's going to be a time where you may switch to mirrorless?
I don't know. I never say never. Who knows? I mean, I do like, as I've said a couple of times during this chat, I do like heavy cameras. I just feel much more comfortable. I'm quite a big chap, and I like the kind of weight of it. So when I'm working on the boats or something, I like the kind of solid feel of it, the big grip and everything. So I'm not sure that I would ever. Obviously, I wouldn't get that. That's the whole point. I wouldn't get that with a Fuji or one of those mirrorless. But having said that, I've seen a lot of my clients use them, and I've seen some friends. Kerry Banner, another great. Kerry Hendry, she's called now, great photographer, and she uses them, and she's actually doing a lot of stuff for Fuji. So I've seen her work and some many others, and it looks great. I mean, it looks fantastic. Whether it's for me or not, I'm not sure. Probably not at the moment, but it's certainly wonderful, and I'm sure that to people that just can't be bothered to carry all that stuff around, it's an incredible. The stuff's
well, this is the thing, isn't it? It's a question of when you're walking about or you're on a trek, whether you want to carry so much heavier gear around, but I think we're coming to the point now where the conversation will continue, obviously, but I think we're all coming to a point now where we realise it's horses for courses, and it's the tools to do the job.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And one final question before I close. What camera do you take out just for a walkabout? Brilliant. iPhone. I was expecting something else there. Well done. Love it. Yes. My iPhone's with me all the time as well.
Well, there you go. No, absolutely. I think we've got the same one as well, haven't we? It's like it looks very similar. Anyway.
I've got the 5S. I've got.
Yeah, me too. I think they say that the best camera is the one you've got with you, and basically that's always the one you've got with you. So that tends to be the one I take out, and the results are pretty good fun, aren't they?
Yeah, it's good fun. That's a nice way to end. And that's the first cough as well.
So bad.
I've done very well, haven't I? Done very well. I'll just take a quick slurp. And that's it. Jonathan, it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, it's that time of the show, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining me for all the shows that I've done this year. It's been 35, so it's a great, and there's going to be more next year. Couple of weeks after the new year starts. Already got some nice guests lined up for you, but yeah, it's that time of the show where this is going to be two-part finish. Firstly, if you're going out this weekend to take any photographs, please leave your camera bag at home. But finally, one thing that Jonathan and I want to say to you is you have a great Christmas. Merry Christmas to everyone.
Merry Christmas, yeah. Cheers.
And Happy New Year to you all. And I'll see you in the new year. I'll be posting the dates up well, shortly after the 2nd of January. So thanks again for watching, and goodbye for now.